We've all been there, haven't we? Late night road trips, a full tank of gas, and an empty highway stretching endlessly in front of you. There's something both peaceful and unsettling about the isolation, the hum of the tires, the faint glow of the dashboard, and the darkness pressing in from every side. But have you ever felt like you weren't really alone? This happened to me during a 12-hour overnight drive from Charleston to some small town in Tennessee. I was running on caffeine and sheer determination, and the night felt endless. After hours of no stops, my bladder started protesting, and my legs ached from being locked in the same position. I started watching for those blue signs, the ones promising a rest area up ahead, a quick pit stop in the middle of nowhere. When I finally saw one, it felt like salvation. The rest area wasn't much, just a tiny concrete building under flickering fluorescent lights. One other car sat in the lot, its windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. For all I knew, someone was asleep in there. I parked, stretched, and walked toward the restroom. As I approached the building, I got that odd sensation like being watched. But when I glanced back at the car, nothing had changed. Shaking it off, I pushed open the bathroom door. The smell of disinfectant hit me first. Then I saw him. A man stood in the far corner of the bathroom, his back to me, his head bowed low. At first I thought he was just another traveler, maybe lost in thought or struggling with a hangover. But then I noticed something strange. He wasn't facing the urinals or the sinks, just a blank tiled wall. Are you okay, man?" I asked hesitantly. No response. I felt a chill crawl up my spine, but I tried to ignore it. People can be weird, that's just life. I needed to get in, do my business, and get out. As I passed him on the way to the stall, I kept a cautious eye on his motionless figure. His breathing was shallow, almost imperceptible. Something about the way he stood, the rigid posture and the silence, made my skin crawl. Inside the stall, I locked the door and tried to focus on the task at hand, but I couldn't. The room was dead silent, save for my own breathing. I stood there for a minute, willing myself to relax, but the tension in the air was suffocating. Finally, I gave up. I flushed the toilet for show, unlocked the door, and stepped out. The man had moved. He now faced me, his pale face illuminated by the harsh fluorescent light. His eyes were sunken, ringed with dark shadows, and his lips were twisted into a faint, unnatural smile. He didn't say a word, just stared, unblinking. I froze for a moment, my brain screaming at me to run, but my feet stuck to the floor. Then, instinct took over. Without a word, I darted past him, yanking open the door and rushing to my car. I barely had time to buckle my seatbelt before I saw him emerge from the building, walking slowly in my direction. Heart racing, I started the car, backed out, and sped out of the lot, leaving him standing in the glow of the rest area lights. I thought I was in the clear. About 20 minutes later, I reached another rest stop. This one looked identical to the last one, same small building, same flickering lights, but no other cars in the lot. I figured I'd try again. Surely the man hadn't followed me this far. Relieved by the empty parking lot, I hurried into the restroom, did what I needed to do, and felt a wave of relief as I washed my hands. But just as I was about to leave, I heard it. Footsteps. They echoed down the tiled hallway, slow and deliberate. My stomach dropped. Peeking under the stall door, I saw a pair of worn boots stop directly in front of it. "Someone's in here," I shouted, my voice cracking slightly. No response. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, putting it on speaker. As the operator answered, I spoke loudly, giving my location and telling them I was being followed. The boots shifted slightly, and then mercifully they turned and walked away. When the police arrived a few minutes later, I stumbled out of the bathroom, shaken but thankful. I described the man, told them everything. They searched the area but found no sign of him. The officer escorted me back to the highway, and I drove the rest of the trip in silence, my hands gripping the wheel tight enough to turn my knuckles white. I still think about that night, about the man with the hollow eyes and the unrelenting stare. What did he want? Why was he there? I don't take late night road trips anymore. Something about the darkness feels less peaceful now, less empty. And every time I pass a rest area, I wonder if he's still out there, waiting in the shadows for the next unlucky traveler. If you're enjoying our creepy stories and would like to continue getting spooked, make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on the bell notifications so you don't miss any upcoming stories. I should have trusted my gut the moment I pulled into that lot. Driving at night has always been my thing. The solitude of the open road, the hum of the tires on asphalt, it's like therapy. Plus, anything beats sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic under the unforgiving sun. I live in a small Pennsylvania town called Latham, but my sister stays in Savannah, Georgia. I visit her often enough that the route down I-95 feels second nature. It's an 11-hour drive, give or take, and I like to leave around 2 a.m. to avoid the morning rush. That Thursday was no different. I packed my bags, grabbed a coffee, and hit the road. By 4 a.m., I was starving. My stomach growled as I passed exit after exit until I saw a food sign. Wendy's, perfect. I took the exit and followed the signs, but something felt off. The road was pitch black, the streetlights absent. When I pulled into the lot, there was a single car parked near the woods. A handful of dim lights flickered from the building, and the drive-through menu was illuminated, but the place was dead silent. I pulled up to the drive-through speaker, waited and waited. No response. A quick Google search confirmed my suspicion. The place didn't open until 6 a.m. I sighed, debating whether to stay and wait when suddenly 3 sharp knocks on my window. I jumped so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. Turning to the sound, I saw a man. He was smiling, his teeth stark white in the faint glow of my headlights. He motioned for me to roll down the window. Reluctantly, I cracked it just enough to hear him. "The place isn't open," he said. His voice was calm, almost friendly. "Yeah, I just found that out," I replied, my unease growing. He leaned closer. "Listen, my car's dead," he said, pointing to the lone vehicle parked near the woods. "Battery's shot. Think you could help me jump it? I've got cables." I hesitated. Every part of me screamed, just drive away. But then there was that voice in the back of my mind whispering about karma. "All right," I said finally, "let's make it quick." I backed up, aligning my car with his. He grabbed the jumper cables and popped his hood while I did the same. As we connected the clamps, a strange unease settled over me. His car was parked at an odd angle, half hidden by the tree-ling. And why had he parked so far from the building? "Go ahead and try it," I called out. He walked slowly to his car, too slowly. When he turned the key, nothing happened. "Let's give it another minute," he said, stepping out. Then, pulling out his phone, he began speaking in rapid Spanish. I couldn't understand a word, but his tone made my skin crawl. Before I could process what was happening, 2 pickup trucks roared into the lot, engines growling. One came from each side of the building, boxing me in. The realization hit like a gut punch. "Oh no," I muttered, ripping the jumper cables off my battery. The man's smile widened into something sinister, something unnatural. His eyes gleamed in the dim light. I slammed my hood shut and bolted, not toward my car, not toward the trucks, into the woods. Branches tore at my clothes and roots threatened to trip me, but I kept running. My heart pounded in my chest as I crouched behind a fallen tree, trying to stifle my panicked breaths. Voices echoed through the forest, 3, maybe 4 men, all yelling in Spanish. I pressed myself into the dirt, praying they wouldn't find me. Their footsteps grew louder, then faded. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. My car alarm blared in the distance. I peeked through the trees and saw the truck speeding off, leaving my car alone in the lot. I crept back, heart pounding. My rear window was shattered and my suitcase, my backpack, everything was gone. My entire month's worth of clothes, shoes, and valuables had vanished. I called the police, shaking as I explained what happened. They arrived, but their words did little to comfort me. The car I tried to help had fake plates, and the trucks didn't have plates at all. They promised to pull the sect footage from Wendy's, but I knew it was hopeless. I drove home that night, defeated. The road felt darker than ever before, and as I replayed the night, in my head, one thought haunted me above all else. I should have listened to my gut. The quiet hum of the gas station's fluorescent lights was the last thing I heard before my world turned upside down. After a brutal overnight shift at the urgent care, I stopped for gas on my way home. It was 4 in the morning in the small town of Bwood, New York, where my parents' life felt more deserted than ever. I'd moved back after a messy breakup and was still adjusting to life away from the bustle of Syracuse. Bwood was quiet, too quiet sometimes. As I stood at the pump, watching the numbers climb, a blue sedan rolled into the station, parking at a pump across from me. A man mid-40s with weird-looking hair and a heavy jacket got out. His presence immediately set me on edge. He walked around the pumps and, with an unsettling grin, said, "You want to see something cool?" I hesitated but muttered, "Sure," hoping he'd leave me alone if I humored him. He began doing the old pulling my finger off trick. It wasn't funny, it was bizarre. His eyes darted between his hands and me, and his smile was anything but friendly. I gave a forced laugh, hoping he'd take the hint, but he didn't stop. My heart raced as I prayed for the pump to click, signaling my tank was full. When it finally did, I quickly replaced the nozzle and hurried inside to grab my change. By the time I returned, his car was still there, but he was gone. My skin crawled with unease as I locked my car doors and checked the backseat empty. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I sped home, trying to convince myself that I was just being paranoid. When I arrived at my parents' house, I retrieved the spare key from its hiding spot, let myself in, and locked the door behind me. The house was silent, my parents sound asleep upstairs. I sat at the kitchen table, eager to eat my late-night dinner, but the strange encounter behind me. Then I heard it, the distinct click of the front door unlocking, followed by the soft creak of it opening and closing. My heart stopped. "Mom? Dad?" I called out, my voice trembling. No response. I crept into the foyer, but no one was there. The door was shut, but something felt horribly wrong. I bolted upstairs to my parents' room, waking them with frantic whispers. My dad grabbed a flashlight and stormed downstairs, checking every room while my mom and I followed closely behind. When he reached the front porch, he turned back to us with a grave expression. "The spare key's gone," he said. My stomach sank. I hadn't seen anyone behind me during the drive home, but someone must have followed me. As my dad searched the basement, I stayed upstairs, drawn to the dining room next to the foyer. My instincts told me to check under the table. I crouched down and froze. He was there. The man from the gas station, hunched beneath the table, his wild eyes meeting mine. I screamed and the room erupted into chaos. My dad raced upstairs and together we tried to overpower him. He was strong, too strong, but with all three of us attacking, he eventually broke free, bolting out the door and disappearing into the night. We called the police, who arrived quickly but couldn't find him. They left a patrol car outside our house for the night, and my dad replaced the lock the next morning. That man still had the key, and the thought of what could have happened haunts me. I can't shake the guilt. I brought him to my family's home, and for what? A careless habit of not checking my surroundings. One thing's certain, whoever that man was, his intentions were far from harmless. And now, even in the quiet of Bwood, I never feel safe